What's going on, FitFam? Welcome to the third part of this nutrition video series. So in the first video, I explained the biggest mistakes you're making with your nutrition and what it is that you actually need to focus on. And then in the second video, I walked you through exactly step by step how you can customize what your specific nutrition target should be. The precise amount of calories and macronutrients, meaning protein, fats, and carbohydrates, you need to be eating in order to guarantee that you reach your fitness goals quickly and easily. So if you haven't checked out those first two videos, make sure to click on the links below and go give them a watch. So now in this final third video, I'm gonna walk you through how you take those custom nutrition targets, your calories and macros, and actually create a meal plan that you're going to be excited to eat that is going to hit those numbers with foods that you love. Then once you have the meal plan together, all you need to do is set up a batch prep session. This is where you make several days worth of food in one go. I've got it down now where I can make an entire week of food in just 1 to 2 hours tops, which is amazing because all of my food is set up to go for the entire week. It's all measured out so that's exactly the right amount I need to be hitting my goals, and it's food that I'm excited to eat because I created it according to my preferences. So while setting up your nutrition for success does take a small amount of time and energy, it is seriously going to be so worth it. Not only because you're never going to have to worry throughout the week what you're gonna eat, where you're gonna get it from, and be scrambling to figure something out at the last minute, but also so much more importantly than that, you are literally going to guarantee very rapid success with your fat loss and muscle gain. I'm super excited for you because honestly, this method is going to change the game for you. All right, so in today's video, I'm gonna be batch preparing 3 meals, my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I personally am going to be making enough just for the next 3 days, but if you wanted to make more food, you would simply multiply the ingredients for each recipe by however many days you want to create. So for breakfast, I'm going to be making banana blueberry protein cookies. For lunch, I'm going to be having rice and beans with guacamole. And for dinner, I'm gonna be having honey balsamic chicken. All of these meals are so quick and easy to put together, and they are so delicious. So the first thing you're gonna need to do is open up the app MyFitnessPal. When you very first start using the app, it's going to ask you a bunch of questions like what is your age, height, and weight? What is your goal weight? Just go through and answer all of those questions, but be mindful that you don't follow whatever calories it's gonna generate for you. It automatically is gonna wanna try and tell you some sort of computer guess at what you should be having, but instead of following that, go through the second video in the series, again the link is in the description, to find out my method of figuring out what your calories and macros should be, because it's going to be a lot more precise. So now that you have your numbers, we're going to go over to the goals section and manually input those numbers. Unless you have the premium version of the app, you can't actually specifically type in the exact gram of your macros, but that doesn't matter, just round it to the nearest percentage point. You're going to be able to see your total macros in grams at the end of the day inside of the diary portion, which is the best part of this entire app. So instead, just memorize what your gram targets actually are for each macro, and then at the end of the day, you can always be checking to make sure that you hit those targets. All right, the next step is to simply put in all of the ingredients for our meals. So you would do this by creating a meal plan with foods that you love, and then simply just playing around on the app, changing up the ratios of each ingredient until you find the right amount for your numbers. So you're gonna go into the diary section and click on the add food button. Then you're gonna search the database for each individual ingredient. You don't have to track all ingredients that you use if they don't really have calories. For example, I don't track non-starchy vegetables, so meaning pretty much any vegetable that's not something like a potato. And I also don't track things like garlic, onion, herbs, or spices because none of those things really have calories. But everything else that you have throughout the day must be accounted for, including what we call hidden calories, which is a type of calories that you sometimes forget that you had, but actually do add up throughout the day. So for example, that would be if you put cream and sugar in your coffee, if you put ketchup on your potatoes, or anything like that, it has to get tracked. The way that I recommend you track your food is to the exact gram. The reason I prefer that you measure things to the exact gram rather than more generic measurements like half a cup, 1 tablespoon, etc., is because you can be overshooting or undershooting the actual amount that you're having quite easily with those more generic measurements. Whereas if you actually use your digital kitchen scale, which you should definitely get, because this is how you're going to be 100% guaranteed that you know exactly how much you're having. Then there's no room for error. You know that if you weighed out 50 grams of potatoes, for example, that you ate 50 grams of potatoes. The more accurate you can be, the more guaranteed your success is. All right, so after you have created your meal plan, you want to go over to the actual macro section and make sure that it's going to be more or less hitting your targets. Another way you can track the food in MyFitnessPal is by actually scanning the barcode of a specific item you have. This is going to pull up all of the nutrition information. And another tip, make sure you specify whether you're weighing things cooked or raw, especially with your proteins and your starchy carbs. Because if you put in 100 grams of dry rice versus 100 grams of cooked rice, the calorie values of those two things is going to be totally different. So make sure you specify by searching it in the database. Now all you need to do is actually prepare the food. So this is where my recommended batch prep method comes in. Choose however many days it is that you want to batch prepare for. If you're super busy, I recommend an entire week, and then simply multiply the ingredients by however many days you're going to do. Then all you need to do is prepare it. So usually this is the way I set up my batch prep sessions. The first thing I do is prep and marinate my proteins, because you want to give your proteins as long as possible to marinate so that they're going to taste as good as possible. Then while my proteins are marinating, the second step is to prepare my starchy carbohydrates. So this is where I would do all the things like roast my potatoes, boil my rice, or boil my pasta and quinoa, whatever it is that I'm going to be having, because that also is going to take a little bit of time. Then while the protein is prepping and the carbs are cooking, I chop and dice all of my veggies, fruits, vegetables, garlic, onions, all that kind of stuff. Then the very last step is simply putting it all together, baking whatever needs to go into the oven, mixing the ingredients together, and then just putting everything in the fridge. And that's it. Now, the very first time you do a batch prep session, it might take you a little bit of time just because you're not so used to it, but before you know it, you're gonna be knocking out an entire week in 1 hour, just like I am. All right, so now I'm gonna walk you through exactly how I'm gonna execute this entire batch prep session of these 3 delicious meals. So let's get in the kitchen. All right, guys, I just wanna show you a little sneak peek of the final shot of everything that we're gonna be making. And in the description below, you're gonna find the full recipe with all of the calories and macros listed out for every single recipe, so you can batch prepare this meal plan as well. Alright, so usually I always start my meal prep off with my protein because it does take the longest, because you also want to let it marinate for a little bit so that it's going to be as tasty as possible. So I like to chop my chicken with scissors. I actually just find it a little bit more convenient, but if you prefer to do it with a knife and cutting board, go for it. You pretty much just want to get it into small bite-sized pieces. And once that's all set, now we're going to make the honey balsamic marinade. So the first ingredient is going to be some good old-fashioned olive oil. So I always like to measure it out with a spoon, and of course I have the baking dish on top of my digital kitchen scale so that I can weigh out to the exact gram how much I'm using. Next is going to be balsamic vinegar. You don't have to be as cautious measuring this out. Obviously olive oil is just more calorically dense, so that's why I like to be a little bit more careful measuring it, because you can always undershoot, but overshooting it is going to be a bit of a mess. Then we have honey, which is another one that is a bit calorically dense, so I also like to measure it out with a spoon so that I can undershoot instead of overshoot. And you can sprinkle in a bunch of sea salt. I always like to be pretty generous since it doesn't have macros. And then I actually forgot, you're also supposed to put in 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard per serving, but I forgot to do it in the actual marinade, so here I am adding it to the finished product, but normally you would do it with all the other ingredients. Then when they're all in there, you're just going to mix it around and then just set it aside and let it marinade. So now we're going to prep our rice. I always usually use measuring cups, but I didn't have them in this Airbnb, so instead I'm weighing it out. So I always do 1 cup dry brown rice to 1.5 cups water, bring it to a boil, then reduce the heat and let it simmer, stirring it occasionally. And 1 cup dry brown rice should give you about 3 cups cooked. All right, now we're just gonna add some garlic and veggies to our chicken. So this is my favorite way to mince garlic. You place them on their side in smush them with the side of the blade, and then you just mince it up and throw that in with the chicken. Then we're going to be chopping up our zucchini, which is going to be our veggie for the chicken. You can use any vegetables you like. There's no right or wrong answer. I just like to use zucchini a lot because first of all, it's green, and secondly, it's really clean and easy to prepare. So this is my way of slicing it that goes a lot faster. You take the whole thing and cut it into 4 long slices, and then it's ready to go to chop into smaller pieces. So once that's all prepped and ready to go, you're just going to throw that into the chicken, mix it all around, and set it aside to let it marinate. All right, now when the rice is done cooking, you're going to prepare the rice and beans with guacamole. So grab a really large pan, set it on your digital kitchen scale, weigh out your beans, and then weigh out your cooked rice. I'm doing 100 grams cooked rice per serving. Then we're going to add in the olive oil, which again, we're going to measure out with a spoon so that we're careful to not overshoot it. And I'm doing 10 grams of olive oil per serving. Then we're going to be generous with our sea salt once again, especially for this recipe. I'm just going to add in a whole bunch, and also some black pepper. Normally I would also add in some paprika because it's really nice in this recipe, but I didn't have any. So if you have some, go ahead, throw it in. And now we're once again just going to smush and mince some garlic, throw that in with our beans and rice. And now we're just going to leave it on the stove and let it cook on low heat, stirring it occasionally. All right, now we are ready to make these cookies. So get a big mixing bowl, get your digital scale, and you're going to put in 1 egg per serving, 1 tablespoon of honey per serving. You can also use maple syrup or any sweetener that you like. And then to give it a little natural sweetness, we're going to add in 1 banana per serving. So you actually are going to want to mash the banana. You might do better adding the banana to the bowl first and then mashing it before adding anything else in. But either way, you get the idea. Mix it all together. And then we're going to add in these awesome blueberries. Oh my goodness, they are so delicious. And add in our oats. I like to use either large flake oats or rolled oats. They're actually the same, just sometimes they're called one or the other, but I really prefer the taste and texture much more than quick oats. Quick oats are also a little bit more processed, so they're not quite as nutritious. And honestly, I just think that they're like more kind of like a mush. So definitely get rolled oats or large flake oats. They're the same thing again. And this is my favorite protein powder that I have been using for months. It's called Birdman, and it is chocolate, and it actually genuinely tastes like chocolate, unlike a lot of vegan protein powders. Honestly, this is the only vegan protein powder I've ever used that I actually enjoy. So we're going to do 1 scoop per serving and mix it all together to make the cookie batter. And then when it's ready to go, we're going to just take a baking dish and spray it with a cooking spray. I do recommend that you get one that's either coconut oil or olive oil, since those are clean, natural oils, whereas the regular Pam is going to be a processed oil, so avoid that. And then now we're just going to make cookies with our hands. So I like to do 3 cookies per serving. Now at this point, you would put both the chicken and the cookies into the oven. So make sure to have your oven set for 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The chicken is going to take 30 minutes, but the cookies are only going to take 15 minutes. And now we're moving on to the last item, which is going to be the guacamole for our rice and beans. So you're going to take a tomato and chop it into small pieces. Then you're going to dice some red onion and throw that in to a Tupperware container. Then you're going to slice up some lime and squeeze that lime juice right on into there. And add in a good portion of sea salt once again. Now we just got to cut open the avocado and throw that in. So as you can see, I do like to measure out the avocado just to know how much I'm having, since it is more calorically dense. I do like to weigh it to the exact gram. And then once it's all in there, you're going to take a fork and mash the avocado so that it's going to become one solid guacamole. And again, you might do better to put the avocado in first and mash it with a fork that way, as opposed to using all of the ingredients at the same time. But that's just what I did. So once that's set, we're just gonna go check on our rice and beans, give it a nice little stir, and that is gonna be done. So at this point, everything is pretty much gonna be done at the same time. We have our cookies done, we have our chicken done, and our rice and beans with guac. So the very last thing we're gonna do is slice up some cherry tomatoes to throw
go on top of the chicken. I prefer to add them in after because I like the way that they taste. I prefer the texture when they're not baked in with the chicken. And that is it, FitFam. As you can see, we just made so many days of delicious food in just 1 hour, if not less. So this is all of the goodness.
All right, FitFam, that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you found it really helpful. And I hope now you can see that setting up your nutrition for guaranteed success does not have to be time-consuming or complicated. In fact, it can actually be really fun and it can end up saving you way more time and energy than you're actually spending by trying to scramble and find food at the last second. And of course, beyond that, it's actually going to give you the results you want more than anything. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe so you never miss any more videos coming from Nomadic Fitness. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.